Ever walk down like the toy aisle of a store? And you notice how some sections are like so obviously for boys or for girls.
Hmm.
Like you could just tell who they're marketing to.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how early that stuff starts, right?
Yeah. And today's deep dive is really interesting. We're going to be talking about how those really early childhood norms actually have a big impact on the world of data science. We're looking at a French article you shared, and it was really fascinating.
Yeah, it's a big issue. And this article has some great points about, the challenges women face in data science and tech more generally,
Right.
and hopefully some ways we can start to fix things.
Exactly, because it's
Right.
definitely a field that needs some solutions.
For sure. And this article starts off with a pretty eye-opening statistic. Only 24% of those working in France's digital sector are women.
Wow. Really?
Hmm.
Only 24%. So even just getting into the digital world in the first place seems like kind of an uphill battle for women.
Yeah, it is. And, sadly, that's not just in France.
Oh,
It's definitely a global trend. When you look at research about women in STEM fields in general, they're just really underrepresented.
Huh.
And the article really points out that it's not for lack of interest in it or because they're not good at it, you
Yeah.
know?
All right.
Often it's just that the closer you get to those like really hardcore tech roles, the fewer and fewer women you see.
Oh, so it's almost like there's this invisible barrier.
Exactly. It's like this barrier pops up.
Interesting. Okay, so we're seeing how that plays out in who gets these tech jobs and all that. But for someone listening who maybe says, well, I'm a musician, so why should I care about a lack of women in data science? What would you say to that?
That's a really good question. And I think it makes you sort of take a step back and think, why does diversity in any field really matter? And if we zero in on data science, think of all the algorithms that are being designed, all the different technologies that are being developed.
Right.
All of that is going to impact all of us, right?
Absolutely.
And if the teams creating that stuff aren't diverse, you're only getting a very narrow sliver of perspective.
It's limiting.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's not just about fairness,
Yeah.
which of course is really important, but it's that we could be missing out on some amazing innovations and solutions.
Exactly. It's been shown that when you have a more diverse team in any field, you have better problem solving,
Uh-huh.
a wider range of ideas, and ultimately the outcome is better for everyone.
Makes sense.
And there's actually research to back this up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they've found that companies with more diverse leadership teams, they tend to have greater profitability, they're more innovative.
It's like that old saying, two heads are better than one. But in this case, it's more diverse heads are better.
Exactly. And this is something I think we can all get behind.
For sure.
Now, the article doesn't just talk about the problems. It also uses this phrase, the leaky pipeline.
Oh, yeah, I was wondering about that.
Have you heard that before?
Yeah, I've heard of it, but maybe you can explain it for listeners who haven't.
Yeah, for sure. So imagine a pipeline, and it's carrying something, very precious, but the pipeline's got all these holes in it.
Okay.
And that's kind of what's happening with women in tech. They get into the field, but then a lot of them end up leaving because of these different barriers.
Right. It's like once they're in, there's a whole other set of obstacles to deal with.
Exactly.
So those leaks in the pipeline, what's causing them? What are these barriers that women are facing?
The article mentions a few things. One is the glass ceiling,
Yeah.
that invisible barrier that women run into, where they can't seem to reach those highest levels of leadership.
Right. It's like no matter how hard you work or how much you achieve, there's this like invisible limit on how far you can go.
Exactly. And on top of that, there's this whole emotional side of it, too.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Like, imagine you're constantly feeling like you're being overlooked, or like you're not being taken seriously, or that you have to work like twice as hard as everyone else.
Yeah.
Just to prove yourself.
Yeah, it's exhausting just thinking about it.
It is. And that kind of constant pressure and stress, it takes a real toll. And it's a big part of why a lot of women just decide to leave the field altogether.
It's understandable, though.
Yeah.
If you're constantly feeling like you're swimming upstream,
Yeah.
it's no wonder that
Yeah.
so many women end up leaving.
And actually, the article mentions that like 1 in 2 women leave the tech industry after just 8 years,
That's incredible.
which is a crazy statistic when you think about it.
It really shows just how big of a problem this is.
Yeah, we're losing so much talent and potential. So it's good that this article doesn't just focus on the problems.
Right.
It also talks about some things we could actually do about it.
Okay, so let's talk solutions. Where do we even begin with something like this?
Well, one of the key things the article talks about is mentorship and just making sure that women are more visible in these roles.
Okay, that makes sense. But
Yeah.
what does that actually look like in practice? Like, how do you create that kind of environment?
Right. So the article quotes Aurélie Lecain. She's the Data and AI Global Director at Acoustics. And she talks about how important it is to have inclusive management.
Which is a great term, but what does that mean like day to day?
Yeah, so it's really about fostering a workplace culture where everyone feels like they belong, like they're valued, their voices are heard,
Uh-huh.
and that they're respected. It means actually doing something about bias,
Okay.
both the conscious kind and the unconscious kind, and making sure that everyone has equal opportunities to grow and move up in their careers.
Right. It's not enough to just say, oh yeah, we support diversity.
Exactly. It has to be baked into the entire culture.
And so mentorship programs are a part of that.
Yeah, they can be really effective.
So pairing women up with more experienced mentors who can kind of show them the ropes and help them navigate the sometimes tricky world of, office politics.
Exactly. And just having that support system, it can make a huge difference, especially if you're in a field where you don't see a lot of people who look like you in leadership positions.
Right. Representation matters.
Exactly. And that ties into the visibility aspect, too. LaCaine talks about how important it is to have those female role models in the tech industry
Oh, I love that.
so that young girls can actually see that these careers are a possibility for them.
Yeah, it's that whole you can't be what you can't see idea.
Yeah.
If you never see anyone like you doing what you want to do, it's hard to imagine yourself doing it.
Exactly. And those early influences can be so powerful. And the article goes on to talk about another really important point, which is the rise of artificial intelligence.
Oh, yeah, that was fascinating. One of the other experts in the article, Ilias Sharkey,
Right.
he brought up AI.
Right.
I thought that was really interesting because you don't always think about that connection.
Yeah, it's not something that immediately comes to mind.
But he was talking about bias in AI.
Right, and I think that's something we really need to be paying attention to.
Absolutely, because AI is becoming such a huge part of our lives,
Right.
and it's only going to get bigger.
For sure. So what Sharkey is saying is that if we're not careful, AI could actually end up making existing biases even worse.
Oh, wow.
Because if you think about it, a lot of the people who are developing these AI models are men.
Right.
So those models are more likely to reflect a male-centric worldview.
Yeah, it's like that saying garbage in, garbage out. If you only feed the AI biased information or build it with a biased perspective, it's going to spit out biased outputs.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to have diverse teams working on AI
Makes sense.
from the very beginning.
Okay, so practically speaking, how do we address that? I mean,
Right.
these biases run so deep, it almost feels like you need like a complete societal reset to really get to the root of it.
It's definitely a complex issue.
Right.
And it's not going to be easy to fix. But the article does offer a little bit of hope.
Okay.
Both of the experts that are quoted in it, they both emphasize that intervening early is key.
So starting young, basically.
Yeah. Before those stereotypes about what boys and girls are good at or supposed to be interested in really start to take hold.
So creating environments where girls are encouraged to explore STEM right from the get-go.
Exactly. And that means at home and at school.
Okay, so what does that look like? What can parents and educators actually do?
Well, it could be as simple as making sure that girls have access to STEM-related toys and activities.
Instead of just dolls and dresses.
Right. And it's not just about the toys themselves. It's about the messages that we're sending to kids.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like if a girl expresses interest in science or tech, we should be encouraging that.
Exactly. Instead of saying, oh, that's not really for girls or whatever.
Right. It shouldn't be boy toys and girl toys. It should just be toys.
I love that.
It should just be about encouraging curiosity and exploration.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes beyond just toys, too.
Right. Like in school, making sure that girls are encouraged to participate in science fairs and coding clubs.
Yeah, and just making sure that they have the same opportunities as boys to learn about and excel in STEM subjects.
So it really is a team effort then.
It is.
Parents, educators, society as a whole.
Yep.
We all have a role to play in making this happen.
And it's not going to happen overnight.
No, it's definitely a long game.
But the good news is that change is possible.
Exactly. We're already seeing more conversations about gender equality in tech and more initiatives to support women in STEM.
Which is amazing.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll start to see some real progress on this issue in the coming years.
This is really making me think, if we want to see real change, we have to go beyond just like fixing the system we have now.
Yeah.
It's more about creating a whole new environment where these inequalities don't even have the chance to take root in the first place.
Right. It's like this article does a great job of laying out some solutions, which are super important. But it also made me wonder, what would it actually take to create a world where women are just naturally drawn to data science. Where it's not even a question of like fitting in.
Yeah.
Because the whole field itself is just automatically welcoming to everyone. So instead of asking, how do we get more women into data science? The question should be, how do we make data science a field that women naturally want to be a part of?
Yes, exactly.
That's a really interesting way to look at it.
It really changes your whole perspective, doesn't it?
It makes it less about like forcing something to happen and more about figuring out like what are the underlying reasons why women aren't choosing this field in the first place.
Right. And it makes you realize that it's not just about numbers and statistics. It's about culture.
Exactly.
It's about getting rid of all those deep-seated biases we have that make us think certain fields are more for men or for women. And that takes a real team effort to change.
Yeah, it's a huge societal shift.
Yeah.
And I know we've covered a lot of ground today, from like kids' toys to algorithms to mentorship. It's a lot to wrap your head around.
Yeah.
So for someone listening who's maybe feeling a little overwhelmed right now, and they're wondering, what can I actually do about this as just one person? What would you say?
That's a great question. And I think the first thing I'd say is don't underestimate the power of just talking about these issues. Like, awareness is so important. So have conversations with your friends, your family, your colleagues.
Right.
Bring it up whenever you can. And then think about your own little corner of the world.
Yeah.
Like, if you're a parent, how are you encouraging your kids to explore all different kinds of fields, regardless of whether they're boys or girls?
Right.
If you're in a leadership position at work, how can you make your workplace more inclusive?
Yeah.
Every little bit helps.
I don't think that ripple effect.
Yeah.
Even small actions can have a much wider impact than you realize.
Exactly. And I think the most important thing to remember is this isn't about fixing women. It's about creating a better world for everyone.
I love that.
A world where everyone has the opportunity to use their skills and their talents and to really thrive, no matter their gender.
This has been an incredible conversation. I always learn so much from these deep dives.
Me too.
It's amazing how something like the gender gap in data science
Yeah.
can actually uncover so many other complex issues.
Yeah. It's all connected, isn't it?
It really is.
It makes you realize how important it is to keep asking questions and to never just accept things the way they are.
Well said. Well, this has given us all a lot to think about, that's for sure. So thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive.
It's been my pleasure.
And to everyone listening, thanks for being here. We'll see you next time.